One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another very special Out of the Fast Lane podcast. I am your host, Brady Hauser. On today's show, we have NASCAR on Fox reporter Bob Pockrass. And if you can tell by the picture that I have right here, he's done many awesome interviews with some drivers. Right here, we have one with him and Clint Boyer. We'll talk about that in a minute. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brady. I'm glad to be on.
So, 2020 was a very weird year for you, but what are some of the highlights, even though it was, like I said, it was weird with the COVID and all that stuff, what were some of the highlights of your 2020 season?
Oh, well, I think there was still a lot of action on the track, and I think, when I think about this season, I think about Chase Elliott in a lot of ways. I think Chase Elliott giving the middle finger salute to Kyle Busch. I think about Chase Elliott then winning the bounty and doing the Kyle Busch bow, which I thought was pretty funny. And then remember him winning Martinsville and Kevin Harvick's trying to wreck Kyle Busch to get that final spot, which Kevin Harvick didn't get. And then I think of Chase Elliott winning the championship and that fist bump with Jimmie Johnson after Jimmie finished fifth in what was pretty much his last race for Hendrick Motorsports.
So, what was it? So, you've gotten to work with Jimmie Johnson through probably a lot of his career. You've done some work with him. What is it like getting to work with the 7-time champion?
Well, I think as a lot of people say, Jimmie Johnson is one of the nicest guys out there, and one of the most respectful guys out there. And he's a guy who respects pretty much everybody and is nice to everybody. And while a lot of people say nice guys finish last, he proved that they don't have to. So, and I think, I think you wish that people maybe could have seen the fun side of Jimmie Johnson a little bit more earlier in his career, but he knew that in order to get sponsors, he had kind of have that corporate image, and some people thought, well, he didn't have a whole lot of personality. He did, but he just didn't show it all the time.
Mm-hmm. So, here's a cool question. I am 15, and what were you hoping to be when you were at my age? Was it always reporting, or was it something else that you were looking to do?
That's a great question. I don't know what I wanted to be. I think I didn't know whether I'd own my own business or what. I mean, I enjoyed journalism, but I wouldn't say that was what I knew that was what I was going to do. I think I always enjoyed journalism. I always enjoyed sports, but I really didn't. I didn't know what I was going to be. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be playing professional sports. I knew I didn't have that ability. But beyond that, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So, what got you introduced into the racing world?
I moved to Indianapolis when I was 10, and if you live in Indianapolis and you grow up in Indianapolis, you get sucked into racing. I mean, it's the Indy 500. While it's a big event and a big race in and of itself, it's a huge community event. And my neighbors would have checkered flag pennants in their yards, and and I live 30 minutes away from the speedway, so it was just part of your culture. And I was in the Boy Scouts, and we set up chairs for the Indy 500 parade every year, and so senior skip day would be to go watch Indy 500 practice. That's what your it was just part of your life if you lived in Indianapolis, and I think that's where you learn. That's where I kind of learned about racing initially.
Mm-hmm. So, back to the NASCAR side of things. Chase Elliott picked up the championship for the first time ever in his career past year. What was that moment like, getting to talk to Chase afterwards and being there during the celebration?
Well, I think it, when you think about it, you're watching it knowing that 8 or 9 days earlier, you didn't think it was going to happen, right? You didn't think that Chase Elliott was going to win Martinsville and then win Phoenix and go back-to-back to win the championship. So, now, granted, with this system, you knew anything can happen. Any of the 4 guys can win it once they get there. But I think when you're watching it and you see him and his father hug, he's the most popular driver and he gives Jimmie Johnson the fist bump, I think you're thinking, wow, this is just one. The guy's 24 years old. Mm-hmm. So how many more could he get? And how big a superstar can he be? I think that's what's going through my mind when I'm watching it. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to win 7 titles, but I mean, it just showed, look, this is a guy who everybody wondered, could he get it done in the high-pressure situations? Had never been to the championship 4 before. Then he gets there and wins it in his first time out.
Mm-hmm. I was I was able to watch that race as well, and because I'm, like I said, I've always, with you and Clint Boyer, here's a picture, I've always been a Clint Boyer fan. He was pretty much my hero growing up, and since he retired, I had to find a new driver, and I was actually, when Chase won in that moment with Jimmy and all that kind of hooked me up, and I was actually one of the people that went and actually got myself one of the 2020 championship shirts. So I think Chase Elliott, I definitely agree with him being the most popular driver. I think a lot of the fans do agree on that. And Chase Elliott, being so young of his age, he does have the potential to be one of the next Jimmie Johnsons, next Dale Seniors out on that racetrack. And I think that's awesome. I also think it's awesome that the youth is getting involved. There are some younger drivers that have the potential to be the next Jimmie Johnson. That's why I'm loving watching these guys race on the racetrack.
So you jumped on the winner's bandwagon.
Well, I mean, a little bit.
Right. So it's a good bandwagon to be on. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Chase kind of is as a champion, and look, they certainly were good on short tracks and road courses, and you look at this year's schedule, and there's more road courses, and Phoenix again is the championship race, and the playoffs stay the same, so it should fit into Chase's MO.
Mm-hmm. So you've done a lot of interviews. I'm going to talk about this moment. So that one race where Brett Keselowski got into Jeff Gordon, and Jeff wasn't too pleased, went over and started swinging some hands, and you were right in the middle of that. What do you remember about that night?
What I remember is that at that time, if a driver didn't finish in the top 5, the driver drove back to the trailer, to their cut hauler, to their transporter, and just drove it right to the front of the transporter so they could load it. So we were all standing by Jeff Gordon's transport because he didn't finish 10th. And I heard on the radio Jeff tell his team, he's like, I'm going to go after him. So I told some people who were standing by the transport, I said, he's going after him. Let's get to pit road. And so that was where we headed to pit road. I mean, Jeff said he was going to do it. So it wasn't too much of a surprise to those of us standing there that Jeff was going to come over. Now, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. We didn't know that Kevin Harvick was going to push Brad Keselowski and say, hey, start fighting, pretty much. But we knew that Jeff Gordon was angry. And so I think, it's, I mean, wasn't surprised, with the way the playoffs are and how much that cost Gordon, you knew that Gordon was going to be pretty upset over it.
Mm-hmm. Looking at this picture, you were behind some camera guys, and then Jamie Little was thrown around right in the middle of all that, I can tell. And then I could see Jeff over here throwing some hands as well. That must have been a wild moment to have that happen right there in front of you.
Yeah, it was before, cell phones and video. I mean, it's before where your cell phone had video, or else I probably would have been trying to get video of it myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's look, if you're around this sport long enough, I think you're going to see a fight or two. They tend to happen.
No, yeah, I've seen it at my local racetracks, and I've seen it in the NASCAR world happen as well. So what else we got? So what is always your favorite track to go and cover? What's it mean to you? What's that track mean to you, and why you like covering it so much?
Well, I mean, I think I talked about growing up in Indy. I think going to Indy is just Indy just has an aura about it. Indy just there's just something about it. Now, is it because it was where I'm from? Maybe, but I could see them race go-karts around there, and I'd enjoy it. So, it's, I would say, just being in that facility, there's just something about it. Again, maybe it reminds me of growing up and home and everything, but I think I think if you ask most people what their favorite track is or what track they like to cover races the most, oftentimes it is the track that they went to when they were a kid.
Mm. Well, for me, example, I go to Daytona. I try to go to the Daytona 500 every year. This year's gonna be a little different. I'll talk to you about that afterwards. But last year I was at the Daytona 500, and I back then last year this time, I had no idea that I was gonna start this podcast. But now that I had this podcast started, and I had Landon Castle, Alan Bestwick, Jesse Awuji, some of the NASCAR guys come on the show, it kind of sparked my mind. So I'm really hoping that Daytona this year, I'm going to get to cover a little bit of that racing, just like for my YouTube stuff. And Daytona, for me, is probably my most favorite racetrack right now out there. Because that, and it's so unpredictable that anything could happen, anybody can win. Like, for example, I don't think anybody, not trying to say anything, but I don't think many people thought what was going to happen to Ryan Newman on that last lap last year was going to happen. So that's the thing about Daytona I like, is the unpredictability. And in this year, now that I have the podcast, get to cover maybe a little bit of that for my YouTube is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, who would have predicted William Byron would have won there in July, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in August in the playoff or in the regular season finale. Daytona, obviously, it can be unpredictable. I think, we haven't had too much of a surprise in the Daytona 500, I would say, since Trevor Bayne, maybe. But it's one of those races you never know. You may not have a surprise for first, but a lot of times you have a surprise in the top 5 or the top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trevor Bayne, I think you were about right. Trevor Bayne was a big one, and for me, as a fan standpoint last year, I thought Ryan Blaney had that race won, but Denny Hamlin did end up winning that. So I think, to look back at it, I think Trevor Bayne's been the underdog story that's happened there. That, and then David Reagan, they found, I think, back in 2010 as well, when he won there as well. I think that's been the most recent underdog stories from Daytona. All right. Who are some of the people you have gotten to work with throughout your years in the racing world?
Oh, man. I mean, I started my first job out of college was at Daytona newspaper. So, my first Daytona 500 was 1992. So, talking to drivers back then, so you can go through the list, Bill Elliott, Dale Sr., Rusty Wallace, all those guys, you talk to, especially working in Daytona, because you would see them. There used to be a lot of testing in Daytona. They used to test once in December and once in January. So you would see them in December, you would see them in January, you would see them in February, and then you'd see them again in July. So there were at least 4 or 5 times a year where you would see all those drivers. Mm-hmm.
So what was it like getting to work with the Intimidator, Dale Earnhardt himself?
Dale Sr., he obviously, after races, he was trying to get out of the racetrack. So, a lot of times it was, a group of media with microphones in his face kind of walking. If you saw The Last Dance or so, and saw the media walking with the basketball players, that's kind of like what it was like with Dale Sr. But there were also times if you had stuff scheduled with him, and he would do stuff, especially with the Daytona paper, where he was, if it was on a schedule, and and he was ready for it, he was very polite and willing to answer questions and honest, and I think the one thing I remember most about him is when he did do the Rolex, him and Junior in 2001. It's one of the happiest times I saw him, because there was no pressure on him, and and he was enjoying the Rolex 24, and and they were running top 3 in their class, and and it was just something relatively new for him that he enjoyed, and I think that he the fact that he could do it with his son also meant a lot to him.
Mm-hmm. So you also mentioned something about like the media following a basketball player, and this is gonna be back to the 2021 season. Looking into it, Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin announced that they were gonna open up their 2023 XI racing team, and Bubba Wallace was gonna be the driver. What's that like? What's that mean to you? Getting to see a celebrity like Michael Jordan jumping ship from basketball now over to the racing world?
Yeah, well, I mean, he still owns his basketball team, so we'll see how much he can be involved with this, and how much I'm sure he'll come to races, and I'm sure he and Denny will talk a lot. He's not running the day-to-day operations, but I just think the biggest thing is that Michael Jordan is somebody who transcends NASCAR, transcends the U.S. So I just think the attention on that team and what they do is going to be totally different than any other team in the sport, and people are going to be watching and seeing how well they do,
Mm-hmm.
and are they going to watch every week? I don't know, but I think they'll at least like read and keep up with what is going on with that team, and I think that always has the potential to bring more eyeballs to the sport.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Michael Jordan, that'd be one of my dream people to meet, would be Michael Jordan. I think any fan would like to say I want to meet Michael Jordan. So I think a lot of race fans are also looking forward to that chance. As long as once the COVID relief lifts, then hopefully like going back into the garages with the fans and stuff. I think that's a lot of people on a lot of people's bucket list now with him moving into the NASCAR world is, man, I want to meet Michael Jordan. So that's a goal of mine one day. Hopefully it's gonna be a while before that happens, but hopefully one day I'll get to come across Michael Jordan, take a picture with him, and say, hey, I met Michael Jordan.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. When he owned his motorcycle team, he didn't come into I guess kind of the paddock area all that often. If he came to race, I want to say he stayed more in the sweet area, but it'll be interesting to see how often he does come into the garage, and what that's like. It'll kind of remains to be seen. Obviously, the garage won't be open at the start of 2021, and I think that nobody really knows exactly when fans will have access back to the garage. Could be later this year, it could be 2022.
Mm-hmm. So I come from a background because I'm from New York, I come from a background where the Big Block Modifieds is our main series up there. So we have a lot of dirt racing. My home track is Fonda Speedway, which was a host of a NASCAR race back in the 50s, and Richard Petty and all those guys came and raced there. But this year, well, actually 2016, Eldora first started with the trucks, and that was a big hit for NASCAR. Everybody loved it, that they were bringing NASCARs to dirt. And then just last year, they've had the Dirt Derby for a couple of years. Stuart Friesen, matter of the fact, the guy that won the last Eldora Derby lives like a half hour down the way. And so he's one of our local like heroes. And now this year they announced that Knoxville is now going to be the new track for the Dirt Derby. And then Bristol is now going to have the Cup cars at dirt. What are you looking forward to seeing the NASCARs on dirt?
Well, I mean, that Cup race at Bristol, that's going to be must-see TV. I don't know if it's going to be any good or if it's going to be crazy or exactly what's going to happen, but it's going to be must-see TV. And so I think everyone at Fox is looking forward to that because it's something different. Nobody really knows exactly how it's going to go. I expect there to be kind of like some heat races of some sort to set a lineup for a main event. How many are in the main event? I'm not sure. I think NASCAR's probably finalizing those details, and hopefully we should have those soon. But I just think it's going to be crazy. It's going to be and it's going to be, I think, unpredictable is the best word. Much like the Daytona road course without any practice. Although they'll at least have practice at the Bristol dirt race. They'll all get to practice there, and the good thing is that Bristol's going to have some I think some IMCA modifieds and some other races on the surface. So if there is an issue with the surface, they can get it right by the time the Cup cars and the trucks get the Cup cars and Xfinity.
It's something like that, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, it's Cup cars and the trucks.
Yeah.
It's Cup cars and the trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they actually, there's going to be a Dirt Car Nationals 2 weeks beforehand with the Big Block Modifieds, the World of Outlaw Sprint Cars, the Lucas Oil late models, and then the Dirt UMP Modifieds as well. So yes, that'll probably be like a set in stone for what's going to like happen during the actual race for NASCAR. So I'm looking forward to that. I know a lot of the guys up in the Northeast are definitely looking forward to get to try Bristol out for the first time, so that's going to be cool. I think looking into that, the two main drivers that are probably going to be the most people that are going to be watching the most is probably going to be Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell. I don't know. Is it going to be open to like other drivers? Like, for example, Stuart Friesen, if he wanted to hop in a Cup car, is that going to be allowed down there?
I mean, it would. I believe. I mean, I haven't heard of any restrictions as far as being able to only do one race. Obviously with the charters, Friesen would need to get like in a Rick Ware car or Spire car or something like that to have a locked-in spot, or go with a team, that has an extra Cup car that they can buy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, but don't forget a guy like Austin Dillon who won the first Eldora race, right? He should be pretty good there. He should be very good there. He's raced on dirt before. He won a truck race, or he won an Eldora race. I want to say Bubba Wallace won an Eldora race, right? He won
Eldora, yep.
So, I mean, I won't rule any of those, rule those guys out, It's, the difficulty is that, just because you're good on dirt doesn't mean you're going to be good on dirt in a Cup car. Mm-hmm. Because especially like a dirt late model has suspension that's designed to race dirt. A Cup car does not have suspension designed to race dirt, and I don't think they're going to allow the suspension that is designed to race dirt. So it's going to be a little bit like a truck race where they're going to be fighting it a lot. With the bodies that they have this year, the steel bodies, I don't know how much they can go up against the wall and hit the wall or not. And still have a good car, so it'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. And then they also announced Knoxville is going to be a host for the Truck Dirt Derby, and Knoxville is very prestige for a lot of the World of Outlaws and the sprint car guys because it's a Knoxville Nationals. What's that going to be like for the truck cars going to Knoxville, changing from Eldora and now moving on to a track that's a little bit bigger and getting to go to Knoxville, which has got a lot of history behind it?
Yeah, again, I think that's going to be an unpredictable one as well. We'll see how we'll see how they race there at Knoxville. The great thing is that they're just going to a historic dirt track, right? And the key about that is that it's if you're a fan of sprint cars and you've seen Knoxville Nationals are one of your favorite events. You may watch a truck race that you wouldn't have watched before. So I think that's what adds the intrigue to going to Knoxville.
Mm-hmm. So looking now into another thing in the 2021 season, the Circuit of the Americas and Nashville are going to be Nashville is going to be returning to the Cup season next year. What's that like getting to go back to Nashville and then getting to see the new road course, which is the Circuit of the Americas?
Yeah, so a lot of these drivers have raced Nashville in an Xfinity or truck, which they was raced at Nashville until like 2010 or 2011. And the other thing is that a lot of them tested a ton at Nashville before the testing rules were changed. It was very easy for these teams to get over to Nashville and test because it wasn't on the Cup schedule. So you're going to talk about drivers who have tons of laps there. And teams with a lot of data from there. So it'll be interesting to see how close they all get on the setup, even though they will have practice there as well. And it'll be interesting to see how much that resonates with the Nashville community. Nashville, the Nashville Super Speedway, it's about 20-25 minutes south of Nashville, and attendance was so before, for Xfinity and truck races. But now that there's a Cup race there, it'll be interesting to see how much the community embraces that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to be a problem at Circuit of the Americas. It's a great fan. I want to say it's a fan-friendly circuit. It's just an amazing place, and I think that will draw a lot of people from that area, and just a lot of people who are who love road courses and want to see a first event. So I think that's gonna generate an incredible amount of interest as well.
Mm-hmm. So looking back in the early of the 2020 season when COVID first struck, and that NASCAR was shut down for quite a while, and during that time, the iRacing Pro Invitational and all other iRacing events started to take place, and a lot of drivers were doing it. It was a big deal. I must say, me personally, watching on TV, it was probably one of the funniest things I've seen because of Clint Boyer's commentary and Larry McReynolds going at it. But what was that like, getting to see how how different the virtual world is compared to the real life world?
Yeah, I mean the thing is that you had some drivers who were really experienced right at it, like Landon Castle, Timmy Hill,
Garrett Smith,
William Byron. So they'd been on it. They knew all kind of the tricks, right? They knew everything that they could, how to race those. Then you had people who had never really done that before. So what I thought was interesting, somebody like Kyle Busch got a lot better throughout, from the first time he did it to the last time that he did it. That was interesting to watch, and it was okay. It was a fun. It was something that kept NASCAR, engaged with its fans. There was a lot of debate of like who should be in what race and all that. And it's hard for NASCAR to do it and be nice to everyone, right? Because those races don't do good when there's 40-something cars in them usually, right? There needs to be fewer than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it showed that that this is something that especially with no practice and no qualifying for 28 races this year. If on a Friday, normally where you would have practice, if NASCAR can get some of the guys together to do one of these events, people will watch, and it'll be fun to watch, and it'll be something interesting to see. But I think it also showed that when you have actual race cars on an actual racetrack, just how dynamic and different that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate for the 40 car thing. I've done it. I race a lot. I'm big with the I do a lot of dirt racing on there because the big block modifieds were just recently added on there, and I can relate that when you put 40 cars in a field, it ain't good. There's gonna be somebody that's gonna wreck. There's gonna be probably a huge pile up. Somebody's gonna go flying into the catch fence like Jeff Gordon did that one day, and I mean the physics in that game are a little off. I must say, like. A car gets turned right, they're going to go for a flip that's going to go for probably the entire backstretch. But I think iRacing definitely has really sparked up as of late now, ever since the NASCAR Pro Invitational. And it was definitely fun for the fact that, like, for Timmy Hill, the fact that he only put, like, $500 into the game. Like, he has a basic computer and a basic wheel, and he can still go out there and beat the guys that have these ginormous sim rigs and, like, cars that they're like actually hopping into, but they're actually in the sim rig. I thought that was cool. That's another thing I think is cool, that everybody has a fair chance in that game. And my uncle is good friends with Timmy, and Timmy told him about how Dale Jr. offered him a $50,000 sim rig, and Timmy told him no because he likes the $500 rig. So that was like the unique part, that there were some drivers that are just so used to what they have, like for example Timmy Hill. And I thought it was cool to see, like, and especially see him as competitive as he was in that game.
Yeah, I mean, he, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay, so how do you handle, because I know it did happen last year with Brian Newman, How do you handle as a reporter? How do you handle a bad crash that could be very severe or tragic? A tragedy could happen. How do you handle that as a reporter?
You just call people, and my assignment was to go over to the hospital and wait to see in case anybody spoke at the hospital. But you just call people, and you uh, use your sources, and you report what you feel comfortable with, and what your outlet feels comfortable with. It's yes, you're sad, yes, you're concerned, but it's your job is to get information, and so that's what you do. You call all the people that you know who might have information, who might be able to tell you something, and you go from there. It's certainly you try to be as sensitive as you can, but you're also trying to let people know what's happening, when you can, when you feel comfortable in reporting something.
Mm-hmm. I was speaking of the Ryan Newman. That wreck happened pretty much. It was his car. Because I go to like I said, I go to the Daytona 500 every year, and his car landed about, let's say, 30 feet in front of me, and I literally watched it. I watched the entire wreck happen. I looked over because I sit up on the top. Me and my grandpa and dad go every year, and we sit way up on the top row. And I remember looking up and seeing him almost as high as the catch fence. And I thought, oh, that ain't good. And then him landing, it was definitely like, I know for a fact that a fan group, for fans that are of a track that has over 100,000 people that come into that racetrack. And when that happened, to hear a pin drop, it was kind of like, oh my God, what just happened? So that's a moment. I know it's not a lot of moments that people want to forget. They kind of want to forget, but I will definitely never forget what happened that day, because I was there that day, and just hearing the pin drop and how like nobody was talking. It was like, wow, this really just happened on this racetrack, and it was definitely one of the like it's one in it's like there's like a 1% chance that something bad like that happens, and you can relate to that. There's not really many NASCAR wrecks that have happened that are tragic, so because of the safety nowadays. But that was a moment that a lot of fans are definitely going to remember for a while now, and I think a lot of, especially for like people like you and even Ryan himself, you're never gonna live that down. What happened that day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously nobody has died in a NASCAR National Series race since Dale Sr. in 2001. But, I was at Daytona plenty of times in the 1990s, and have covered tragedies before. And, and it's important for people to know, sometimes people, I don't want to say they forget that it's a dangerous sport, but, when um, when people have not been injured as brutally as in the past, I think sometimes some people think, oh, it's not that dangerous, right? Or it's not that everything's going to always be okay. And I think that was a reminder that that there still is a huge element of danger when it comes to racing a race car, especially when you're doing it at 200 miles an hour, inches away from somebody else.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm gonna have a couple more questions for you, and then we can just have a little open discussion. All right. So, what did you think when NASCAR came back from COVID? How do you think they handled that situation with all the drivers being like 6 feet apart, all that? How do you think they handled that? And for the TV wise, what was that like at that racetrack that day, being that, and also looking up in the crowd in the stands and seeing absolutely nobody?
Yeah, well, I wasn't there for that. I went to a couple of tracks uh, after March, but I think NASCAR did what they felt they had to do to get these races in. Teams, NASCAR don't get the TV money. Teams don't get the TV and purse money if they don't race. And so, in order to keep these teams, up and running, they had to race. And so NASCAR found a way to race. and and they did it in a way that they felt was safe, and they didn't have a huge outbreak as far as people getting severely sick. Granted, they didn't test, so we really don't know, how many people actually potentially had COVID throughout the year. They didn't give us any information on how, how many people answered on the questionnaires that they had COVID at some point during the season. So we don't know. That there's a lot of things we don't know, but what we do know is that there wasn't a severe, a significant outbreak of people getting severely sick, and they got all the races in, and that was obviously important for the financial health of the sport, it's important for obviously fans who watch the sport. Gave them something to watch on Sundays and continue rooting for or against their favorite or least favorite drivers.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this is going to be my final topic I wanted to talk to you about, because I have just recently started announcing at a racetrack local to our neighbor, or like my neighborhood. It's local, not Fonda, but the track that's just over the hill, which is called Glen Ridge Motorsports Park. What kind of advice would you give me, or would you give someone like myself who was considering moving on, like trying to make it to the upper levels in the racing world? What kind of advice would you give to me?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, working at a local track is a great first step. It's and I would say just do as many different things as you can. Don't just do your local racetrack. If your high school needs somebody to do PA or do some announcing of some sort, or if there's a high school radio station, or if you go into college or college radio station, do all sorts of sports. Don't just do racing, because when when networks and people are looking for, first off, the jobs are so few and far between. You may not get a job in racing right away, but you might get a job doing other sports that might also include some racing, or allow you to work at your local track while you're doing maybe your full-time job is doing other sports. And also, the people doing the hiring often don't just want people who are race fans or race experts. They want people who are good at their craft, and the way you get good at your craft is by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and doing things that aren't that maybe you're not as comfortable with as you are when you're doing racing. So that's always been my advice, is that whether you're trying to do public relations or broadcasting or reporting or anything like that, is to first off, most jobs in the racing world do require a college degree, and the second is don't just focus on racing, because a lot of people in this industry, I worked 12 years for the Daytona Beach newspaper, and 90% of my job was not racing, but the 10% I did of racing got me known well enough to the people who did work in racing that when some openings happened, I was able to get those jobs because they were familiar with me. I think that I see it all the time. People work for a public relations firm who maybe one of their 5 accounts that they work on is racing, and they make the contacts, and people see what they can do, and then and parlay that into a full-time racing job. So, certainly there's some people who just focus on racing and are successful, but I just think that getting as much experience as you can in as many different ways. You asked about Ryan Newman earlier, right? And how do you do that? Well, when I worked for the Daytona Beach newspaper, I had to do cops reporting for one night a week, every week. So I knew what it was like to be at the scene of a car accident, before I ever covered a racing accident. I knew how, having talked to people involved and talking to family members and all that. So that experience can certainly help when you start covering something in racing that potentially can relate to something outside of racing.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to keep that in my mind for a while now. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask me? Feel free.
Just, do you think Stuart Friesen's got a shot? You talk about Stewie. Do you think he's got a shot at the truck title this year? And what's your scouting report on Stuart Friesen for 2021?
Well, I mean, he just recently announced that he's going to run the Lucas Oil late models a little bit next year, so that's very cool to see. But for him moving when he did, he was at Chevy, I believe, and then he moved over to Toyota, and he was on his own last year. And I'm not trying to like bash him or anything, but his finishes and stuff were not where he really was like looking for. So I'm pretty positive for this year. For him, his main focus right now is Daytona and Knoxville, the two tracks that he's got like the best shot to win. Because Knoxville is it's a dirt background, so he's got a fair chance winning there. Same with Bristol. He's got the experience on dirt. He won the Eldora race, but Daytona, I talked to him just the other day at a local ski mountain, which is actually pretty funny. And he said that Daytona is another track for him because anybody can win. And going into this year, he said he's like the underdog now because of what happened last year, because his finishes were like top 20-ish every week, and he was not. He didn't like being back there because let's face it, 2 years ago he was like Matt Crafton. He was always up front every week, and then last year when he jumped to the different manufacturer, his season kind of went downhill. So he's hoping this year he can get a couple wins, and then when he makes it into the playoffs is when he'll get aggressive and he'll go for the championship. So his odds are, it's like a 50-50 chance he could or couldn't make the playoffs. It just depends on how the first couple weeks go, and then how he starts finishing, and with the points and all the points system and all that. That's how it, and then it'll play out. So, yeah. That's what I've reached out. So you got.
I can't hear you if you're still talking. Sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I think you missed me. Hold on, guys. I apologize for technical difficulties.
Alright, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Hold on. Let's see what's going on. Let me call him right back. Alright guys, we're having a little technical issues. I'm gonna call him right back. Maybe this will work. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Let me fix the camera again. Sorry.
You're good. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody.
Alright. I don't know what happened. There
Okay.
you go. Sorry about that.
Where did I leave off when I was talking?
You said that Stewie didn't. You said that he just wants better results.
Yeah, he wanted better results, so he was looking into Daytona and Knoxville being and Bristol being the three tracks that this year he's gonna try to shine the most and try to get the points and the wins and all that stuff. So if he can win Daytona, he's already locked into the playoffs. So that would be big for him to win Daytona and have all that stress behind him. Like, all right, I have a win. Now I just got to focus on getting some good finishes, maybe get another win in there, and then hopefully go fight for the championship like he did 2 years ago. So I think this year for him, it's going to be like a 50-50 odds for him. Either he's going to make it to the playoffs or he's gonna have another year like last year. So it just depends on racing's unpredictable. Anything can happen in racing. So to know how he's gonna do in 2021 is gonna be a lot. It's kind of like it's almost too early right now to know like how he's gonna do. Like I want to see the first couple truck races and see how he does, and then we'll say okay, he's got a good chance to make it to the playoffs, or okay, he's gonna maybe not have a good season again. But I'm hopeful because he's a nice. I've gotten to know Stewie pretty well. He's a nice guy. I love his family. His little boy is one of the most funny little kids and nicest little kids you'll meet. So, I think I don't like picking favorites, but I'm hoping for him this year, being that he's a local racer. So, yeah, I think that's kind of how I think Stewie's gonna do this year.
All right, that sounds good.
Any other questions?
If he wins, his boy will dance on the bed of the truck again, I'm sure.
All right, I've heard according to Stu, he's practiced his dancing a little bit. So,
all right.
Any other questions?
No, that's about it.
All right. Well, Bob, I thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm going to keep you here for a second because, like I said, I have something to talk to you about afterwards. If you guys are new to the channel and you like seeing this kind of content, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. You won't miss any notifications when I upload a video. And I think coming up we might have something. We have something big coming up in the next couple weeks. I'm not gonna disclaim anything right now, but I will say this: I will be at Volusia Nationals in February doing some covering for the dirt car area. So make sure you guys stay tuned. There's gonna be a lot of cool people. I'm gonna try to get a lot of cool interviews on that show. I got one of my goals for that season. Bob, you probably are gonna be. You know this guy very well. My goal to be down in Volusia, down there. There's a couple drivers I'd like to talk to, and the main one I really want to get to the chance to talk to will be Kyle Larson down there. So if we can do that, you guys will get to see that right here on the channel. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And other than that, like I said, thank you guys for watching. This is Bob Pockrass from Fox Sports. I'm Brady Hauser, and I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we will see you next time.